Welcome to our session, folks. Today we're diving into some intense perspectives around war, debt, and revolution, the kind of
Yep.
ideas that Colonel Douglas Macgregor laid out.
It's wild, right? There's so much to unpack here. So, what's the core message he hits on?
Well, basically, he argues that the state of America it's like far more precarious than the average person thinks. A mix of inevitable war, crippling national debt, and potential revolution. It's a jolt to the complacent mindset.
Right, and he doesn't hold back, does he? There's a sort of urgency in his tone, as if the wake up call is long overdue.
Exactly. He lays out how America's financial woes are tightly interwoven with international conflict. It's like these two issues, war and debt, are in a toxic dance, fueling one another and pushing us closer to a tipping point.
Yeah, that's a powerful image. But then revolution comes in as the inevitable consequence of these mounting pressures, right?
Correct. McGregor suggests that the revolutionary spirit might just be the outcome of decades of mismanagement and reckless spending, and the military industrial complex, if you will, plays a big role in that equation.
Uh huh. That old narrative, the idea that the government uses perpetual conflict to manage debt and control populations, really resonates here.
It does. And if you think about it, it's like a spiral, War begets debt, debt fuels further conflict, and before you know it, society is destabilized to the point where revolution seems almost the only recourse.
Yeah, it's a bit chilling to imagine how these forces compound. But can we really say revolution is inevitable? Isn't that a pretty extreme conclusion?
That's a solid point. While McGregor is pretty stark in his claims, he does base his argument on long-standing trends that seem to repeat in cycles. It's almost like he's warning us that just because history hasn't fully repeated this exact pattern before, doesn't mean it's not looming.
Right, that's thought provoking. So, you'd say he's tapping into that historical sentiment, where cycles in wars and economic crises eventually lead to radical change?
Yep, exactly. It's like during major conflicts throughout history, people tend to rally around transformative ideas, sometimes even overthrowing long established orders. McGregor places America at the center of these cycles.
That's one way to see it. But here's where I get a bit skeptical. Isn't it possible that the current system might adapt before reaching a revolutionary breaking point? I mean, reforms can sometimes stave off the revolution, right?
That's a fair challenge. What McGregor is basically saying, though, is that the underlying issues are too deep-rooted for mere reforms. He sees the debt burden as not just numbers on a page, but a catalyst for geopolitical tension and internal dissent.
I see that perspective. So he's painting a picture where the game plan is set, a system built on unsustainable practices that eventually forces a cataclysmic change.
Precisely. And there's also a warning here about the nature of American military engagement. McGregor contends that by over-relying on military interventions, the U.S. inadvertently tightens the cycle of war and debt.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle, right? Right, and he doesn't mince words. He's pretty direct, saying things are worse than most people understand.
Absolutely. His tone is brash, even urgent. He challenges almost the sanitized versions of military interventions we often hear in mainstream media.
I get that. I wonder, though, if this approach might oversimplify some of the nuances. I mean, isn't it a bit reductive to say, look, if we don't wake up now, revolution is coming?
That's a valid critique. But think of it like an alarm bell. Even if everything doesn't linearly lead to revolution, the warning is there. It's like, hey, something is very, very wrong, and you need to take notice.
Yeah, that alarm bell image is spot on. I can see that. When you put it that way, it's less of a prediction and more of a clarion call to reassess, right?
Exactly. And he doesn't just dwell on debt and war as isolated issues. His narrative connects them to how policy choices, both domestically and internationally, create a complex web of causality.
It's a web we might be caught in deeper than we know. And this web, it really makes you question if the conventional wisdom around America's military strategy and economic governance holds up under scrutiny.
Yes, it does. Think about it. The reliance on military might to solve economic or political problems ends up deepening the debt and stretching resources thin. It's like trying to patch a leaky boat with tape, only to eventually sink. And then, you're left with a revolutionary mess on deck.
Exactly. That analogy really hits home. But do you think that in a modern context, this kind of thinking is too outdated or alarmist?
Well, that's the interesting part. It might sound alarmist, but if you reflect on historical patterns, there's some truth in waving red flags before disaster strikes. Sure, the context is different, but the underlying logic persists.
That's an interesting distinction. True. And while many experts might downplay the revolutionary potential, Macgregor is essentially saying, wake up before it's too late.
Precisely. It's a tough pill to swallow, recognizing that the system could be rigged from the start. And he drives home the idea that a combination of external pressures and internal debt dynamics might trigger a collapse that's far more violent than we expect.
Yeah, that's a heavy thought. But given today's global political climate and economic indicators, do you think there's some merit in this perspective?
I do, to an extent. Look, while it's not a guaranteed future, the convergence of geopolitical tensions and ballooning debt is a warning sign. He's urging a reevaluation of how we approach both foreign policy and fiscal policy.
Right, it's like he's eyeing a storm on the horizon. And that storm, if it hits, could be disruptive on every level. International alliances, economic stability, even the social fabric of the nation.
Exactly. It's a cascade effect. One problem begets another until eventually the entire system is compromised. It's a harsh diagnosis, but one that forces us to think critically about where we're
Absolutely.
headed.
At times, I wonder if this perspective might also be used to justify inertia or fatalism among policymakers. Oh well, it's already doomed.
That's a fair concern. However, I think McGregor's goal is to jolt us out of complacency rather than to endorse inaction. It's that provocative call to action, like we need to confront these issues head on before it's too late.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if we take this seriously, what kind of changes should be made to break this cycle of war, debt, and revolution?
Good question. It's not so much that there's one silver bullet, but rather a fundamental rethinking of priorities. Reducing unnecessary military engagements and pursuing sustainable economic policies might be steps in the right direction.
That sounds logical. I agree. Ultimately, it's about balance, ensuring national security without igniting further conflict or overburdening our finances.
Exactly. And while the ideas sound dramatic, they're a reminder that history is full of cycles and that sometimes overlooking the warning signs can lead to irreversible change.
Right on, that's the crux. It's been a fascinating breakdown of a challenging perspective. I guess the takeaway is to critically assess our present trajectory and, maybe push for smarter policies before things spiral out of control.
Absolutely. It's a call to remain vigilant and proactive rather than passive, accepting the status quo.
Thanks for the enlightening exchange. It's always good to challenge our assumptions and dig deep into these complex issues.
For sure. And remember, even if the future feels uncertain, conversation and critical thought are our best tools against complacency.
Yep, indeed. Until next time, keep questioning, stay informed, and let's all hope for a smarter, more balanced approach to the challenges ahead.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay curious and engaged, and we'll catch you in our next discussion.